This is the Read to Lead podcast, episode 546.
Hi, I'm Michael Hyatt, author of Your Best Year Ever, a 5-step plan for achieving your most important goals. Make sure your year includes moments reserved for this. It's the Read to Lead podcast with my friend Jeff Brown.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Read to Lead podcast, where we dive into the best ideas from nonfiction books and help you apply them to your personal and professional life. I'm Jeff Brown, and today we're talking about something that I think every single one of us faces, and that is fear. Fear, in fact, is our theme this month inside the Read to Lead community. You can find out more about that, by the way, when you go to jeffbrown.me. Fear can hold us back in ways we don't even realize. It shows up in sneaky, subtle ways, and unless we identify it and address it, it can keep us stuck in our jobs, certain relationships, and our lives. In today's episode, we're going to cover the 8 most common fears that prevent us from reaching our full potential, how each one shows up in real life, what kind of impact it has, and most importantly, how to tackle them head-on with practical action steps. So, if you're ready to start crushing the fears that are holding you back, let's dive in. Probably no surprise that fear number 1 is the fear of failure. We avoid taking risks or setting big goals because we're afraid of falling short. Let's say maybe you're dreaming about starting your own business, but you keep putting it off because you're afraid it'll fail. So you stay in a job you don't like, avoiding the risk altogether. Well, the impact of that is that by letting this fear win, you miss out on growth opportunities and you stay stuck in a place that doesn't fulfill you potentially. You never know what you're capable of because you never take that first step. So to tackle this, try reframing failure as feedback. Instead of seeing failure as the end, look at it as valuable information that brings you closer to success. You no doubt know that virtually no one has succeeded without first failing along the way. There's that story of Thomas Edison, who failed 10,000 times before succeeding with the light bulb, and supposedly said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just learned 10,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. So this week, I want you to think of one area in your life where you're holding back because of fear of failure. What would that be? What is that in your life? Now, simply take a small step toward that goal, as tiny as you want. Start by maybe researching, signing up for a course, or maybe just talking to someone who has experience and having done the thing you want to do. The key is to make progress, is to move forward. And it probably comes as no surprise to you. In fact, I should have said this right up front. I've got a book recommendation to help tackle each one of these fears as well. And with regard to the fear of failure, I could recommend many books. In this case, I'll recommend a book called You've Got This, The Life-Changing Power of Trusting Yourself by Margie Worrell. In fact, I interviewed her for that book back in episode 311, readtoleadpodcast.com/311, if you want to check out that interview. Fear number 2 is the fear of rejection. This is one we often think of in the context of romantic relationships or maybe potential romantic relationships. But think of other ways in which this shows up. We don't speak up, we don't share our ideas or pursue opportunities because we fear others will dismiss or reject us. Say you're in a team meeting at work and you have a great idea, but you keep quiet because you're afraid your boss or your colleagues will think it's a bad idea. I remember being in a work situation where I put out an idea that I wasn't sure was a good one, and the receptionist, I was several notches up the ladder above her, but the receptionist said to me, "That's a really dumb idea." So that may indeed be the kind of response you get, but because of the culture we had instilled in this particular workplace, I didn't take that personally. It wasn't a personal attack on me. And in retrospect, in looking back at it, she was absolutely right. But because of the culture we had created, she felt comfortable enough to say that. And was I embarrassed? No, I wasn't embarrassed. I heard her out. We talked through it. And I determined that, well, okay, maybe that's not such a great idea. But don't let that stop you. By staying silent, you lose opportunities to contribute and to grow. You don't get the recognition you deserve, and others might not realize the value that you bring. So to tackle this one, desensitize yourself to rejection. Start by intentionally putting yourself in situations where you might face rejection. That helps you get used to the feeling and you bounce back even quicker. I have to recommend the book here by Jia Zhang. I spoke to him, 10 years ago, back in episode 85. His book is called, appropriately, Rejection Proof: How I Beat Fear and Became Invincible Through 100 Days of Rejection. And the action here you'll want to take this week is not much unlike Jia Zhang, and that's to set a goal this week to share an idea or opinion in a meeting, say, or a conversation, and whether it's accepted or not, just the act of speaking up will build your confidence. Fear number 3 might sound counterintuitive at first, but it's the fear of success. Believe it or not, success can be just as scary as failure. We avoid taking steps towards success because we fear the increased responsibility or expectations or visibility that comes with it. You might be offered a promotion at work, but you hesitate to take it because you're worried the new role will be too demanding and you'll be in the spotlight. This happened to me back, 22 years ago. I'd been on the air at this particular radio station for about a year and a half. I'd done afternoons for a time. I'd done the midday shift for a bit. And I was then asked to move to co-host the nationally syndicated morning show. At first, I was terrified. I'm like, you talk about a spotlight. I wasn't sure I was ready for that, but long story short, I would go on to fulfill that role for about 6 years, and my multiple co-hosts and I, over that time, would end up winning multiple awards, experiences I never would have had I not said yes to that opportunity. By avoiding success, you limit your potential both professionally and personally. You may find yourself stuck in the same role for years, while other people all around you advance. So one method for tackling success is to prepare for success by visualizing how you'll handle the responsibilities and pressures that come with it. Knowing what to expect can, I have found at least, ease your anxiety. So this week, think about what success looks like for you in the next 6 months. Write down how you'd manage the new challenges that come with that success. It'll help you feel more prepared when the opportunity arises. My book recommendation here is Carol Dweck's seminal work, Mindset: The New Psychology of Success. Here's another I think we all can identify with. Fear number 4 is fear of change. We cling to the familiar and resist new opportunities because the unknown feels uncomfortable or scary. If there's one thing I've learned with regard to success, is that you're going to have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Let's say you've been thinking about switching careers, but you're afraid of leaving behind the security of your current job, so you stay put even though you're not happy. The impact of this fear is pretty obvious. It keeps you stuck in situations that no longer serve you. You miss out on personal and professional growth that comes from stepping into new opportunities, much like we talked about with the last fear, the fear of success. So to tackle this, embrace gradual change. You don't have to overhaul everything at once. Start by making small, manageable changes. So your action step this week is to pick one small change you've been avoiding and commit to taking action on it. Whether it's updating your resume, maybe networking, or learning a new skill, just start. And my book recommendation here is by brothers Chip and Dan Heath. They've written several together. The one that applies here is called Switch: How to Change Things When Change is Hard. This next one is likely to hit home. It's fear number 5, and the fear of inadequacy or imposter syndrome. We feel unqualified or like a fraud even when we're fully capable. That's the imposter part. We worry that people will find out that we're not as good as they think we are. So let's say you've been asked to lead a big project, but deep down you feel like you're not good enough and someone else would do a better job than you. Well, the impact here is this fear holds you back from taking on leadership roles or stepping into opportunities where you could truly shine. My suggestion here for tackling the fear of inadequacy or imposter syndrome is to keep what I call a win journal, W-I-N, a win journal. Document your achievements and positive feedback you get from others along the way so that when doubt creeps in, you can remind yourself of your accomplishments. I actually have a note in my notes app. I can't remember off the top of my head what I call the note, but it's simply a list to a bunch of other notes where I've included things that people have said about my work or said about a particular idea, things that I can go back to when I'm feeling down or like an imposter, and I can remind myself what other people have said in the past. No, I can do this. I am capable. So your action step here, if you haven't done so already, is to start a list of your recent achievements, no matter how small you think they might be, and review this list whenever you feel inadequate. It's going to help you see your worth more clearly. My book recommendation here is from a former Read to Lead podcast guest, Shelley Archambault. I spoke to her in episode 349. That's readtoleadpodcast.com/349. Her book is called Unapologetically Ambitious. Take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. 5 down, 3 to go. Fear number 6 is fear of judgment or criticism. How does this one show up? Well, we avoid taking creative risks or putting ourselves out there because we're afraid of what others might think or say. The critics have it so easy, don't they? You want to start a blog, say, or a YouTube channel, but you're afraid of getting negative comments or being judged, so you never start. I can remember when I first started writing publicly on a blog back in like 2007 or 2008 maybe. I blogged for a year under a pseudonym, under a fake name, because I feared the criticism of my writing I might receive from total strangers. It wasn't until I'd written publicly under a fake name that I finally got past the fear of sort of coming out, if you will. The impact here, if you continue to fear judgment or criticism, is you hold back your creativity and you never fully express yourself, which limits your ability to impact others and share your voice. So to tackle this, focus on the mission, not the critics. Remind yourself why you started and who you're trying to help or inspire. I'm reminded here of a conversation I once had with Seth Godin, the first time I believe it was that I ever interviewed him back in like 2014 or 2015. And he said with regard to writing that no author has ever read all their 1-star Amazon reviews and then said to themselves, gee, now I'm a better writer. When people express their dislike for your work, it doesn't mean your work is bad. It just means it wasn't for them. Your job is to continue showing up and putting out your work for the people who it is for. And as soon as you realize you don't have to please everybody, the last excuse you have for doing your best work goes away. So this week, share a piece of content, a blog post, a social media update, or an idea without worrying about how it will be received. Focus on your message and not the feedback. This fear, the fear of judgment or criticism, ties in quite closely with that second fear we looked at, the fear of rejection. My book recommendation here is from Seth Godin. It's called What to Do When It's Your Turn, and It's Always Your Turn. We talked about that book together in episode 66 of the Read to Lead podcast, readtoleadpodcast.com/066. Fear number 7 is the fear of discomfort or difficulty. Here we avoid tasks that seem too hard or uncomfortable because we fear the effort or the stress involved. I'm reminded of the Stoic-inspired philosophy that says, easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. It kind of ties in with something John Maxwell once talked about. When faced with a decision today that might require sacrifice or self-discipline, we can choose sacrifice or self-discipline, or we can put that decision off. If we put the decision off, or we put off taking action on that thing today, then what happens later? Future you ends up facing regret. So that's really the choice. Sacrifice and self-discipline now or regret later. Maybe you want to train for a marathon or learn a new skill, but the thought of how hard it will be makes you put it off. Well, by avoiding discomfort, you miss out on growth, development, and ultimately achieving your full potential. Instead, you can build resilience through micro challenges. You're sensing a theme with each of these? Take on small, manageable challenges to get you used to discomfort, gradually increasing the difficulty as you go. So this week, identify a difficult task you've been avoiding and break it down into smaller steps. Take the first step today and then celebrate the progress that you make. My book recommendation here is from Andy Malinsky. We spoke to him about this book in episode 156, readtoleadpodcast.com/156. It's called Reach, a new strategy to help you step outside your comfort zone, rise to the challenge, and build confidence. And the final fear we'll be looking at today is the fear of disappointing others. This one shows up when we make choices based on other people's expectations or fears of letting them down rather than what's right for us. Maybe you've always dreamed of starting your own business, as we talked about in fear number 1, the fear of failure, but you stay in your current job because you're afraid of disappointing your family or your coworkers. See, sometimes multiple fears come to attack you at the same time. In this starting your own business idea, it could be the fear of failure. It could also be the fear of disappointing others and more. And the impact is you end up living a life that isn't truly yours, leading to long-term dissatisfaction and that thing we talked about a moment ago, regret. So to tackle this, clarify your own values and goals. Focus on making decisions that align with your own priorities rather than trying to meet everyone else's expectations. This week, write down your top 3 personal values and compare them with the expectations others have of you. And take one action this week that aligns with your values, not theirs. Give yourself permission to do that. My book recommendation here is The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, A Life Transformed by the Dearly Departing by former palliative care nurse Bronnie Ware. Spoiler alert. The number 1 regret of the dying, the people she interviewed, the people she cared for, was, I wished I'd lived a life true to myself rather than a life others expected of me. Don't allow the fear of disappointing others to keep you from all you're meant to be and do. So there you have it, 8 fears that can hold you back from pursuing your goals and 8 practical ways to tackle them, to overcome them. Now, the key takeaway here is that fear is natural, but it doesn't have to control your life. Whether it's a fear of failure, rejection, success, or something else, there are always, and here's that theme again, small steps you can take to push through it. Remember, every time you face a fear and take action despite it, you grow. You learn something new about yourself, and you get a little closer to becoming the person that you're meant to be. So, which fear resonated most with you today? What's the one action you're going to take this week to start moving past it? I'd love to hear about it. Reach out to me on social media. I'm at the Jeff Brown most places, or in the comment section of this post, which is at readtoleadpodcast.com/546 for episode 546, or send me an email, jeff@readtoleadpodcast.com, and let me know what fear you're tackling head on. For a summary of each of these fears and the books I recommended to help tackle each, go to the show notes page for this episode. That again is readtoleadpodcast.com/546. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Read to Lead. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra encouragement today. Until next time, remember, leaders read and readers lead.